Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'd like to call the 2023 Cavendish Town Meeting to order. I'm Michael Ripley. I'll be your moderator for tonight. Please rise and join for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get into the meat of things, I'd like to let the representatives that are here tonight, John Aronson and Allison Clarkson, have a moment where they could speak to everybody and address everybody here. So, I don't know if you guys do straws or...
Is that on?
I think so.
Thank you. I'll turn my back to you folks and address the body. My name's John Aronson. I'm the representative. I'm on my second term in the Vermont legislature. This term, I've been assigned to corrections and institutions. Last term, I was in education, so I got a pretty good balance of experience up in Montpelier. I'd like to just, I don't want to take up very much of your time because this is your town meeting, not my chance to talk. But there's several bills that are very important that we're going to be, that have come out of various committees and will be being discussed on the floor in the coming weeks. This is a biennium, and we're only partway through the first year of the biennium. The bills are just starting to hit the Senate floor and the House floor. Then they'll cross over. The House bills will go over to the Senate bills will go over to the House. Various changes will be made. They'll make another swap back and forth, and hopefully these important pieces of legislation will find the governor's desk. The one I think that has created the most controversy and, in some regards, misinformation is the green heat standard. That bill this year originated in the Senate as Bill S5, and it parallels the effort that was made last year, the biennium, that did not, that the governor vetoed, and the veto was upheld by one vote. The Senate, I think very wisely this time, put 2 years of planning coming up, okay? It passed out of the Senate on Friday. It'll be in the House. We'll be discussing it very shortly. 2 years that the Public Utilities Commission will have to take the plan that the Senate has devised and look at it and figure out how it can work, and so it becomes affordable. The bill is very much skewed to help people without a lot of money, because I've heard many arguments that, oh, I can't afford it, I live in a mobile home, et cetera, and so forth. Well, I guess what I'd have to ask you is, how many of us can afford $5 or $6 for fuel oil? So at the end of 2 years, the PUC will come back with a plan how it's going to work. Already, many of the fossil fuel dealers are already installing heat pumps. It's not just heat pumps either. It's weatherization, it's updated wood stoves, it's pellet stoves. There's different things in heat pumps. Another issue that is acute within the state, it affects the small communities and the big communities, and I know this board has been talking about it, and that's the housing crisis. Both House and Senate are working hard to try to come up with some solutions. I know here in this town, Airbnbs have taken up quite a bit of the available housing, and I'm not sure exactly how we're going to fix that, because everybody has a constitutional right to buy a piece of property and basically do what they want with it within regulations. Workforce development, you don't have to look very far to find a business that's looking for help. That's acute everywhere. Last biennium, we did put a lot of money into workforce development, and it goes right down to waiters and waitresses, all the way up to government and hospitals. There's an acute shortage of nurses, and there's several pieces of legislation to help address that. Here's one that does affect your community that In November, there was a bond vote put up to upgrade some of the systems in this building, Chester Elementary and Green Mountain. And the bond bill failed. Back in the, up until 2016, the state chipped in 30% of construction costs. That program got overwhelmed. It took several years before the state could catch up with the payments they owed the towns, or I should say the school districts. And so the state aid to school construction has not existed since 2016. House Education right now is working on a bill to try to, looking at several states and models and see what might work so we can get that system going again and hopefully help you folks out. And it's really too bad because these structures are your biggest investment you have in your whole town. And to allow them to, I understand, we all pay taxes, we all think our taxes are too high, and in many instances they're almost unaffordable. But to allow our structures to deteriorate is, you don't let your roof leak until it affects the structure of the building. And the problem we have right now is that some towns are still going ahead with bond votes successfully because the community is affluent enough that they can actually get a bond vote passed. I'll pick on Woodstock. They're probably going to pass a bond to build a brand new school to the tune of $80 million. So what happens to the community? What happens? How is that paid for? It goes right through the education fund. So everybody in this room is helping to pay, but yet a town up in the Northeast Kingdom that isn't as affluent as Woodstock can't get a bond vote passed because of the tax structure. Another bill that's being worked on this year is the paid family leave. The paid family leave bill, if it makes it through the House and the Senate and to the governor's desk, will provide 3 months of paid family leave. Then everybody's going to say, well, how does that get paid for? If it passes, there'll be a 0.58%, half paid by the employer and half paid by the employee. If you work at a job and you get no maternity leave, bereavement leave, sickness leave, this will provide you the ability to pay your bills for 3 months. Child care, that ties in, all these various components actually tie together, and child care actually ties into the lack of help. Either you can't afford child care or it's not even available. There's a bill in the works right now to start a system of pre-K, okay? It would be full-time, and that's going to have a double effect. It's going to provide daycare for 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, and it also, it's proven that if you can intercept these kids at a very early age, it'll help them through their entire schooling career and into their adult life. Now I'll turn it over to Allison. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Hi, this is awkward to be here. Good evening. It is really lovely to be here. I'm Allison Clarkson. I'm one of your 3 state senators. Dick McCormick, Becca White, and I have the honor and pleasure of serving you in the State House and in the Senate. I serve you as the majority leader of the Senate. I also serve as vice chair of Senate Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, and in Senate Government Operations. And I have to say, first of all, I know it's our 2nd year of being back in person, but it's still such a treat. And we're honored that you let us speak briefly, because actually the state and the towns are big partners in delivering services, in delivering infrastructure, in delivering education, in delivering tons of things to the people we care about in our communities. So I have come to appreciate this really fully serving on Senate Government Operations, and we think and work with the towns all the time. The clerks are often our most steady witnesses in Senate Government Operations. I would just like to say that I'm just going to be very brief. The Senate had 4 big priorities this year, and John has spoken to some of them: housing, workforce, childcare, and reducing climate change. And we've acted on all 4, and we're expecting 1 from the House. So on housing, we have passed, we've had the luxury of the last 2 years of spending a lot of federal money on new housing, on renovation, on addressing blight, on some low-hanging fruit with accessory dwelling units, and there are programs for the Vermont Housing Incentive Program and for accessory dwelling units. There's lots of money out there if you're interested in renovating blighted properties and bringing them back online. However, what we haven't done is really addressed the barriers we have in our own communities to developing more housing. That's our zoning, that's our Act 250, and that is our permitting. So we have permitting, zoning, and regulatory reform that's in this bill. Very exciting. We hope it makes it all the way through. Probably won't, but it's in the works, and that is really designed to bring more density to our downtown and village centers, and for towns that are doing. Are you doing bylaw modernization work in Cavendish? No, not yet. But in towns that are doing that work and identifying areas for growth, this will give you the green light to develop a much more dense housing, which is quite exciting. On childcare, we're creating opportunities to increase access to childcare. We're helping finance families right up through moderate incomes. We are sending resources to childcare centers and to workers. And we're trying to figure out the delicate balance of what businesses will pay in addition to families and the state and communities, because it's a 3-legged stool in childcare in terms of who's responsible for financing it. So we're working on that. The workforce bill is coming from the House, and that expands a lot of the things we worked on last year. And then the last thing John mentioned is reducing climate change, which we have done with our S5 bill, which I've heard from many of you, and I know it's changed actually quite a bit from when many of you were in touch. But we took a big step forward in our efforts to reduce climate change. This is a bill which puts in place a plan to transition over 25 years to a cleaner energy future. This plan is designed to help Vermonters afford what we know is going to be a costly transition off of polluting fossil fuels. And this bill sends our vision for what we want to build to our policy architect. So the Public Utilities Commission is our policy architect. They're going to come back in 2 years, as John said, with a plan, a detailed plan with a cost analysis, so that we can, as the legislature, look at it in 2 years and greenlight what we want, in a responsible way, knowing what it's going to cost and how we're going to help Vermonters pay for that. So nothing is changing right now, and we're moving forward with a plan, which is the first step. So thank you all. Thank you for being in touch. Please do be in touch. Our phone numbers and our email is all available on the legislative website. We're working hard. We're halfway through the session, and we're working hard on your behalf, and it continues to be stimulating, often very thorny, but we hope to make great progress on behalf of Vermonters and for Vermonters. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, John.
I got to add one thing.
Sure.
Senator Clarkson mentioned zoning. You folks, I know Cavendish doesn't have zoning. This is very sore subject for some people. There is no move whatsoever to force towns to have zoning. The effort is with towns that have zoning to open up more areas for multiple use housing. So.
Thank you, guys. So again, good evening and welcome. I'd like to remind you of some of the basics of how we govern here tonight. We need to remember that we meet here tonight in the Civil Assembly as a community and a tradition that's older than the state itself. We meet to come together to make decisions about our community, and as we deliberate or we advocate for our positions, please do so, but not at the expense of our neighbors. Please don't make accusations or refer to somebody negatively. Let us remember there's an immense gap between saying I am right and and I believe I am right. Let us remember that our neighbors with whom we disagree with are really good people. We just disagree with them. Let us remember that in the end, caring for each other is far greater than the importance of any differences that we may have. As your moderator, I'm here to help you accomplish the business we have to intend to do tonight. I'm here to facilitate the discussion, and you need to speak to me after you've been recognized. All the articles that we have are going to be voted on by Australian Ballot. I will read them. I will ask if there's any discussion or any questions. We cannot make any motions or any amendments, and we can't take any action until they're voted on tomorrow. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Wait for me to recognize you. You're going to have to come up to the microphone. Whether you want to sit or stand with the microphone is fine. I'd ask you to state your name and then speak your mind. If you have a question for another person, please ask it through me. If you've already spoken, I may not call on you again until all others have had a chance to speak. Those of you who are out there in the Zoom land, if you raise your hand on your screen, Brendan will see it and let me know that you've raised your hand. You need to remember that only registered voters can speak here tonight. If you're not a registered voter, please respect that you cannot take part in the discussion. I'd like to ask for something that I ask for every year by unanimous consent. We have several members here of the group, either up front or in the audience, who have a lot of history and information about things that we may find pertinent. Robert's Rules of Order state that no one can speak more than twice on any one topic put before this body. I would like to ask that unless anyone objects, to suspend that rule, so as long as I've given everybody else a chance to speak, that anybody can speak as many times as they want. Hearing no objections, we will get started. Are there any first-timers here tonight? Okay, we're all veterans. One of the few times I've been accused of speaking too softly. I appreciate that. The last thing I'd like to do before we get started is have a moment of silence for all the people that we know who have left us this year in town. Thank you for that. Okay. The town meeting warning for March 6th of 2023 for the town of Cavendish. The legal voters of the town of Cavendish and the county of Windsor are hereby notified and warned to meet at the Cavendish Elementary School or via Zoom on Monday, March 6, 2023 at 7:00 p.m. and then at the Parkersville Fire Department at 10 o'clock in the forenoon on Tuesday, the 7th day of March, 2023 to transact the following business. Please remember that the polls will be open till 7 p.m. tomorrow night. The first article reads, to elect town officers for the ensuing year by Australian Ballot. Are there any questions about the first article? If you didn't notice when you came in, there's a board up there that has a picture of all the articles or ballots that you'll be getting tomorrow, if you want to take a look at that on your way out. Seeing no questions, I'll move on to the second article. It's always a crowd favorite. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to collect all taxes on real and personal property for which it has a statutory taxing authority in installments. Taxes collected by the town are to be paid to the treasurer on August 15th, November 15th, February 15th, and May 15th, with interest of 1% per month added to any tax principal balances due and not paid by the quarterly due date. The final due date for all tax principal balances is the 15th day of June, after which they shall become delinquent and will be subject to an 8% penalty in addition to the interest. If a payment due date falls upon the day that the treasurer's office is closed or officially closed, payments then will be accepted without penalty or interest added if they're received by 4:30 p.m. of the next business day. Amounts allocated to current year taxes under the state of Vermont's Homestead Property Tax Income Sensitivity Program shall be applied to the taxpayer's property tax installments pro rata, the total adjustment divided equally between all the quarterly installments, in accordance with 32 VSA. Any questions about Article number 2? Comments? Sir? Can you please come up to the microphone up front here, please? Thank you, Jen.
I apologize, I am not a property owner in town right now. I've just become engaged to a lady that lives in Cavendish. And what I am speaking about is, I understand.
Brian, are you a registered voter?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here in the town of Cavendish?
I am not. Town of Springfield right now.
You can't speak at our meeting. I'm sorry. Any other comments, questions, or concerns about Article number 2? Okay, Article number 3. Will the voters adopt the fiscal year 2023-2024 town budget as proposed by the Board of Selectmen in the amount of $1,950,584.99? Any questions or comments about Article number 3 in the budget we have proposed? Please.
On the ambulance service here, it's like $75,000 from the town. Don't individuals pay the ambulance? I mean, most people pay it individually to the ambulance themselves. I don't know why we have such a large charge.
That is the appropriation that we pay to the town of Ludlow. So every year, that is what they charge us for that service. There is a program that goes on that people can option in for paying individually, but that's individual, that's not part of the
So
town.
it doesn't matter how many individuals pay, you still have to
Correct.
pay the same
We
amount?
still pay the same amount.
So we could not pay then, and it wouldn't make any difference?
I'm not sure of the details of the individualized program with the ambulance. I just know what our town appropriation
That's
is.
private.
That's a
Through the
private,
fire
yeah.
department. I mean, through the ambulance.
Yeah, that's something that they put out that isn't through.
All the towns that the Ludlow ambulance covers pays an appropriation, including the town of Ludlow.
It's based off of the call volume for the town.
Yeah, I don't know where it is right now, but I have a question on the pay raise for you, I guess it is.
Yep.
It looks like about $10,000 in 1 year.
It's just it was the cost of living increase. That's all that, I think, wasn't that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
$8,000 cost of living?
Whatever the cost of living was, actually 7.9%.
Eight point nine.
8.9%.
Yeah.
The other employees don't get that,
Every salary got the
Yes.
same raise.
and yours came to that much?
That's what it was calculated as, yeah.
That's what we do every year. If it's 1.2% cost of living, that's what the employees get. And I'll
That's
tell
what
you,
it's
that's pretty much what it's
every
been for the
year,
last
so.
15 years.
Okay, thank you.
This is an unusual one.
Don't worry, Roxy, I'll take you to the hospital and lick a load.
Microphone.
Any other questions? Comments, concerns, things you want to bring up about the budget? Sir?
I think this thing is working anyhow.
It's picking up for her.
Further.
Okay. I just had a question on the police sheriff business. Last I knew, the town was looking for an alternative proposal to the $70,000, and I see $25,000 is allotted for next year. What does that consist of? Is that the same as always, or is that a hybrid, or what is it?
I think the board, and I'll speak for the board on this, that we usually budget approximately 18.4 and so at this point, I think if anyone has followed our meetings, that we weren't prepared to jump to that point of $70,000. There needs to be more town input, discussion for that. So The 25,000 was kind of a placeholder for,
Okay.
our contract expires the 30th of June. So whether we discuss with the Sheriff's Department to continue the way it is, if that's even an option, or we decide to go back and we'll have to investigate a different option, whatever that may be, whether that is a hybrid option with the Sheriff's Department or something that was kind of a placeholder, because obviously, depending on where we go, the cost probably, if the town does elect to have coverage with the Sheriff's Department, it'll be more than $18,000. So this was kind of a step increase.
Okay, I think the $70,000 was the figure I saw.
That was the figure that we saw.
And
yeah.
then you were talking about possibly another proposal submitted, and I assume that hasn't been?
That has not happened.
Okay, thanks.
Please.
I see the gravel's like 40,000 a year, and then it's 114,000 last year. What?
We had a horrific, I'm sure, as you know, the
And that's
mud
like a-
season was horrific.
Is that just for the roads?
Yeah.
That was for the roads. And I
That
mean,
big of difference from 40,000? to
we
100,000?
spent last year with mud season, if you remember that weekend, it rained and was warm, and we had trucks spinning nonstop for about 12 to 24 hours to get the roads passable. So we were hauling stone from Sosimo's nonstop to keep up. That was one of those costs that, trust me, I knew it coming in, not something we can control, something that we had to do, because either if we didn't, you're not getting home. The fire department's not getting to your house.
It was close anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. So it
was just a
probably
bad
could have
mud
been
season.
200,000. But it was, the trucks could barely keep up. And
So
as we
how-
know, the cost for gravel, we're paying so much more a yard at this point than we were even 3 years ago. So that's just the way it is. So now now we're trying to institute the gravel pit where we're going to be able to crush our stockpile in our lower pit is such that we will be able to produce our own gravel for, we're going to hope, a few years here.
Could you pave the roads, do you think?
No,
How much would that cost?
a lot more than that.
Would? No, that's too bad.
Any other questions? Hearing none, or seeing nobody wants to speak, I would like to, before we adjourn the meeting, give a chance for the ARPA people committee to put on a small presentation for us about where those funds are going to be spent or how they're going to be spent, if I'm getting it correctly.
I'm not too good at this, but I'll try. Hi, my name is George Timko. I'm a selectman, and the ARPA funds are a federally appropriated amounts of money, and more will be expressed about that shortly from another member. The option was that the select board had a choice to create a committee and receive some public input or not. And the board decided to form a committee. And this is to, the committee will receive some public input to be able to guide us to how to use the funds in the best way. It will also receive applications for certain projects, review them, determine which ones seem the best, and then recommend those to the select board. The select board will have the ultimate decision on where that money is spent. I want to introduce the members of the select board. I am the chair. Stephen Plunkard is also on the committee. Wendy Regier, who I think is on a Zoom tonight, is the vice chair. Peter LaBelle is also, Jen Leake, Betty McEnany, Julia Janu. So those are the voting members. Brendan McNamara is also on the committee. He's a non-voting member, but he's the clerk of the committee. And we meet every once a month, and the agendas and the meeting times, of course, it's a public meeting, it's warned, are on the Cavendish website. And so we hope that people will give us some input. Someone later will be speaking about a questionnaire that we have coming up. So I'd like to turn the floor over to Peter LaBelle, who will explain more of what these ARPA funds are and some of the rules. Peter.
Thank you, George. If you can't hear me, please let me know. I'll try to speak up. ARPA, okay, it's not a retirement program for Americans. That's AARP. This is the ARPA, more government acronyms. It's the American Rescue Plan Act, passed by the government as a result of the COVID pandemic. It is $1.9 trillion that the government put into the system. It's direct relief to the states, counties, cities, and towns, and so forth. From that, $350 billion went to the states. And of course, we're a fairly small state, so we got about $200 million out of that. A year ago in January, the Treasury Department released a final rule, as if anything the government does is ever final, that gives us all of the rules on how to spend it and what we can and cannot do. We'll talk a little bit about both of those things. Ultimately, Cavendish has received $421,000, which isn't even a year's worth of budget for us, but it's still a considerable amount of money. And the select board wants to get input from people all around the town to find out what the best use is for those funds. We have to have those funds encumbered or obligated by the end of 2024, so we're starting now to gather the information. And all the funds have to be spent by the end of 2026. Now, Treasury in its rules came up with 4 ways that the recipients may use the funds. First is to respond to the public health emergency or its negative economic impacts. The second is to respond to workers performing essential work during COVID-19 by providing premium pay. The third is for provision of government services to the extent that we've lost revenue because of COVID-19. And the fourth one was to make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband. Well, Treasury got a lot of pushback on that because certainly for small towns like ours, it was very, very difficult to determine what our losses were due to COVID. They had some very complicated formulas, which were very difficult to parse. So the Treasury put in another rule which said that towns may elect a standard allowance, and in our case, that would cover the entire $421,000. And that standard allowance allows us to consider the entire amount for provision of government services. In other words, we can use it for just about anything that the government can do. The town of Cavendish did elect that standard allowance, so our hands are not really tied by some of the Treasury restrictions. What exactly are government services? They're talking about construction of buildings, road building and maintenance, health services, general government administration, environmental remediation, provision of police, fire, and other public safety, including purchase of police and fire vehicles. So government services is what we're looking for. We'd like to give you a sort of a list of areas that other towns have talked about already. Like Betty McEnany to come up and give us that.
The Vermont League of Cities and Towns has been approached by many of hundreds of towns in Vermont as to, some guidance. This is, it's dropped in our lap. What do we do? How do we do it? So the League of Cities and Towns has given a couple of areas. One, municipal business operations. The kinds of things that might be covered under that would be things that you'd see at the town office, records going online, Zoom equipment so that meetings could be held remotely, creating a capital plan, digitizing the land records. There are multiple things that could be done for the municipality. In addition, as Peter mentioned, water and sewer, those types of things could be brought under that municipal side. There's also the community side. We've talked about having our communities grow and make them attractive, ways that can be done to revitalize the community, outdoor recreation, trails, parks, green spaces, recreational facilities, working on diversity, adding the child care, supporting housing, bike and pedestrian safety. We perhaps could even do something cooperatively with Ludlow. There's talk about that bike path that's been attempted for years. This could be one way to do that. Community gathering places, recreation type of things, broadband, municipal. There are a number of allowable things that can be done, and we need input, not just from our committee creating ideas, but you will hear from others about surveys and what have you, so that we can hear from you and get ideas that we haven't even thought of. There are some types of projects that are allowable and some things that aren't. There's going to be, this presentation is going to be on the town website, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail there, but some of the things that can't be done are obligations that the town already has, unfunded pension plans, matching funds towards other federal grants, paying interest on principal of outstanding debt. So it's not meant to cover bills, but it's meant to improve the community, whether it's through the municipal side or whether it's through the community side. And Julia Janu will come and share more.
So right now we're in the exciting phase, finally, of community engagement. So we've created a questionnaire for anyone who has an interest in Cavendish to fill out. Our intention is to collaborate with all the local businesses, the nonprofits, community partners, and as many community members as possible. Our goal with the questionnaire is to collect input and identify community needs, and also to hear any preliminary ideas you might have about how we should spend this money. So April 15th is the questionnaire deadline. Printed copies are here tonight by the door, and they're available at the town hall office and also at the library. So those places will also collect them, and then we will collect all of the questionnaires by April 15th. The questionnaire is also on the website, the town website. as a PDF, so you can print it and fill it out and drop it off at the town hall as well. So after April 15th, our committee will gather up all the questionnaires, we'll tally the results, and we'll share them with everybody. And we will, at that point, identify the ideas that qualify to take the next step and to fill out a more formal application that includes pricing and community partners and such. Some basic qualifications we'll use will include determining if the project addresses a long-term issue that we haven't yet been able to adequately address, if the project invests in urgent needs, if the project prioritizes short-term investment with long-term benefits for the town, and if the project meets widespread community need. So the viable applications, like George was saying earlier, the viable applications will then be presented to the select board, and they will have the final decision-making. So our goal is to ensure that projects are selected that fulfill widespread community needs within the federal guidelines that we've been given to help our town prepare for a bright future. So we feel really strongly about collecting as much community input as possible and make sure everyone feels like they have a chance to share their ideas and their thoughts with us. So please take a moment to fill out the questionnaire and encourage your friends and your neighbors to do so as well. And the deadline is April 15th. Yeah, Margot?
Are you going to do this on SurveyMonkey? Because that's how a lot of surveys are done here. If you don't have somebody on your committee to do it, Shannon, can you convert that?
Do you?
Sure. We had issues with SurveyMonkey in that the type of questionnaire we developed was not easily applicable to SurveyMonkey without putting out a cost that we didn't feel was really necessary. So we are going to try to get this questionnaire, to different places and, get as many people as we can. You can, like Julie said, it's online on the website. You can print it out, you can mail it back in, drop it off. We felt that going the other way wasn't going to, it was going to complicate the process so much at this point that we decided it wasn't necessary.
Were there any other questions?
Any other questions?
Hello, my name is Matt Seaton. Despite the accent, I am a voter in the town of Cavendish. Good evening. I just wanted to advocate on behalf of a particular project, which I think will be a submission to these funds. I think it'll be useful for people to hear just like an example of what we might do with this money. I am a junior member of the Cavendish Volunteer Fire Department, several colleagues here tonight. We would like to weatherize our building. You know the building on Main Street in Cavendish. It costs a lot to heat. We have to keep it heated. We have to stop in the winter. We have to stop the tanks and the tanks in the fire apparatus from freezing. So we have to keep it heated. Fuel is very expensive. If we can weatherize a building, which just means adding insulation, I don't think it would cost more than about a quarter of these funds. That would be an extremely valuable thing for this town. We would be able to save on fuel bills going forward, and that would be a saving to our budget and to the taxpayers, the property taxpayers. It would just be extremely useful. I think my colleague on the department and on the fire district committee, Stu Lindberg, will be putting in an application to these funds. I just give this as an example of what we can do with this money. But also, if this does come up, I would like to ask for your support for it. I think it's a good cause. It's a good example of what we could do with this money. Thank you very much.
I guess, there was something mentioned about money use and what you couldn't use it for. And I guess I was just wondering if this money could be leveraged in any way by financing, say, the town's portion of what might be a bigger project supported by state, for instance, bridge repairs or culvert repairs, or even road repairs themselves. So that's, like I say, it's a question. I don't know whether we can leverage the money in any way to get more out of it.
Thank you, George. Yes, in ways, and part of the application will require that people have looked at other ways to help finance, either through state programs, grants, whatever different means might be out there, so that we're not just relying totally on these funds for a project if there are grants and other monies that are readily available to help offset that. Maybe it'll be a matching, so that way the funds we have will be able to be used for more, projects and things. So, yes, basically the answer is yes.
Seeing no other questions or comments, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry, John.
One important thing I forgot before, when I got done, was also on the table is a brief legislative report from me. On the flip side is a questionnaire. I need your input. I represent you, and it gives me a litmus test of some of the important subjects. Well, you can fill one out tonight. I'll take it tonight. Take it home. Take it to the polls and turn it in tomorrow. Mail it to me. But please take the time to do it. Thank you.
Right.
I just want to raise one issue. We were longtime residents of town. We moved out, but we're back. And in the last couple of weeks, there's been articles in the paper, and some of you have been to meetings about the possibility of this school not being our local school. That troubles the heck out of me. I don't know what can be done about it, but I think it's something that we should all keep on our radar screen. This is too good a building and too good an opportunity for our kids. Whether we have to figure out how we can withdraw from the union. I'd like to go back to Windsor Southwest and every town having their own school board. I think what's happened to education is criminal. And I think if we lose this school, it's going to change the character of our town. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of that and see if we can't figure out how to stop that from happening. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Second. Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're closed for the night. The select board and perennial